New residency rules could deter British workers and investors from moving to the ROC. 5 years on from the abortion referendum. And the 41st Special Olympics Gibraltar National Games gets underway. Good evening. A Supreme Court puisne judge has said it's regrettable that Gibraltar has no custody time limits like England and Wales. Back in February, Justice Matthew Happel denied bail to a man who had spent nearly a year on remand. But the defendant, Mark Macias, was later acquitted of 4 out of 5 charges and was sentenced to only 3 months, meaning he spent more time on remand waiting for trial than his eventual sentence.
The ruling on bail in the case of Mark Macias was delivered in February, but its publication was held back until verdicts had been returned. Macias had applied for bail for a 3rd time while awaiting trial. He'd been arrested in April 2025 and, by the date of the ruling, had spent 322 days on remand. Had he remained in custody until trial, that would have risen to 440 days. His lawyer argued that this was too long, and that continued detention could mean Macias spending longer on remand than any sentence he was likely to receive if convicted. Puisne judge Matthew Happel refused bail. He said there were still substantial grounds to believe Macias might commit further offences or interfere with witnesses if released. The court also considered the case relatively complex, involving several complainants, including children, and evidence around whether an item seized was legally a firearm. The judge said he was very narrowly persuaded that keeping Macias on remand until trial would not breach his constitutional right to trial within a reasonable time or release. But he added that Gibraltar's lack of custody time limits was unsatisfactory, saying defendants should not have to rely on a broad constitutional right to argue they had spent an unreasonable time on remand. Macias was later convicted only of possessing a BB airgun, contrary to the Firearms Act. He was acquitted of the 5 other charges on the indictment. At sentencing, puisne judge Liam Yates imposed the maximum penalty of 3 months imprisonment, taking into account previous convictions. The time Macias had spent on remand counts towards that sentence.
Staying with the courts, a 36-year-old man has been sentenced to 2 years and 3 months in prison for controlling and coercive behaviour. Liam Goltz was found guilty in the magistrates' court in February of actual bodily harm, 2 counts of common assault and controlling or coercive behaviour. The matter was then sent to the Supreme Court for sentencing. Puisne judge Liam Yates described the case as serious, saying it was so serious only a custodial sentence will do. He sentenced Gold to 27 months for controlling and coercive behaviour and 12 months for actual bodily harm. The sentences will be served concurrently, meaning the total sentence is 2 years and 3 months. Gibraltar could enjoy the biggest Brexit dividend with the EU-UK treaty. This is according to the Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council's Deputy Chair, Lord Hugo Swire, who believes Gibraltar is in a position where it can look both into the EU and also outside to the wider world, and in particular to the Commonwealth. Lord Swire attended a reception at the Mayor's Parlour marking the 5th anniversary of the Council's Gibraltar office.
With the treaty bringing with it new opportunities for the ROC, Gibraltar is set to maintain and build on its momentum with the Commonwealth. A reception hosted by Deputy Mayor Andrea Simpson marked the continuing partnership between Gibraltar and the Commonwealth Enterprise and Investment Council. The CWEIC brings together governments, businesses and investors across the Commonwealth, helping turn relationships into practical economic opportunities. Addressing the reception, the Deputy Chief Minister, responsible for Commonwealth relations, said the visit reflected Gibraltar's long-standing commitment to strengthening its links across the Commonwealth and underlined the importance of it as a network for trade, investment and international cooperation. José Garcia highlighted the significance of the establishment of the Council's presence in Gibraltar, describing it as an important step in creating new opportunities for local businesses and strengthening economic ties with Commonwealth partners. He said Gibraltar was well placed to contribute through its internationally recognised strengths in financial services, digital technologies, online gaming and maritime services.
And our news editor Christine Vasquez spoke to Lord Swire and asked him how Gibraltar had benefited from its association with the Council and whether any concrete business partnerships had been formed.
I think there have been, and we've got about 6 or 7 what we call strategic partners here, including the government. And they've been active participants in everything we've done around the Commonwealth and continue to be very supportive, as you heard in the Deputy Chief Minister's speech this evening. I think, if I might say, Christine, I think an even more interesting question is what opportunities can our Council offer Gibraltar now in Gibraltar's new world.
You said today Gibraltar is an example of the Brexit dividend. Post-Brexit, the Commonwealth seemed as the ideal alternative to the EU. Do you think that this is still the case, even with the EU treaty, EU-UK?
No, I'm always quick to say about the Commonwealth and certainly trade within the Commonwealth. I don't see it as a replacement to any existing treaty or any existing trade relationship. I think it's an add-on, but I think it's a very, very important add-on. You're talking about $1 trillion worth of intra-Commonwealth trade between the 56 countries of the Commonwealth, some of the fastest growing economies in the world. I mean, we've just done a huge investment conference in Lagos. I mean, Nigeria is growing at a rate you cannot believe. And then, of course, the smaller countries, we're all going off to Antigua for the heads of government meeting at the end of the year. We've got economies right across the Commonwealth offering different things, not sector-specific, huge opportunities for companies here in Gibraltar to reach out and do incredibly well by extending their relationships right across the 55 countries.
It's easy to see how Gibraltar can benefit, but can Gibraltar contribute? Is there a role perhaps in bridging with the UK and the Commonwealth?
Yes, no, I think there's a role, incidentally, potentially for a country like Spain, for instance, who wants to do stuff either with the UK or in the Commonwealth, to use Gibraltar as the interlocutor, if you like, for that purpose. So I think there's plenty more. Look, I first came here I came here in 1968, or tried to. It was closed in those days. The last time you interviewed me, although none of us of age, you certainly haven't, was 20 years ago we've just worked out. And, you know, if you compare Gibraltar then to Gibraltar as a result of this treaty now, post-Brexit, it's a different ballgame. It's a radically different place, and the opportunities here are now huge. And I think Gibraltar will pivot to take advantage of this. As I said in my speech just now, looking both ways, looking towards the EU, but critically looking outside the EU to the wider world, and part of that is, of course, the Commonwealth. And we all know about Gibraltar's geographic position, which has been pivotal for so many things over the millennia. But now its position as an economic entity could be incredibly important to global trade.
So we've heard of your links with Gibraltar, your visits to Gibraltar. You have, of course, advocated for Gibraltar. You've lobbied for Gibraltar, especially when it came to incursions. You said you found Gibraltar today the best you've ever found it.
Yeah.
What about the hub itself? What plans are there, perhaps for expansion or for its future?
Well, we're very open. Look, I mean, we've only got about 7 or 8 strategic partners here, including the government, as I said. And if there are companies listening to this program, or who've heard what I've said over the last few days, or read various things, and they feel that they'd like to come and speak to our guy here, Jared, who's excellent, he will put them in touch and show them what we can do for them. But critically, they've got to be companies who actually do want to up their game and do want to reach out into these different markets. We're very, very good at that. What's not so good is if companies join us and then don't do anything and everyone's disappointed. So I say to any company here in Gibraltar watching this program, if you really want to explore the opportunities around one of the fastest, most important economies in the world, the 56 countries that comprise the Commonwealth family, get in touch and we'll help you reach your goals. That's what we just do. It's quite simple.
Meanwhile, the GST says the new residency rules are likely to have an adverse effect on British people seeking to relocate or invest in Gibraltar. Responding to the measures announced by the government last week, it also argues the salary threshold of £37,500 doesn't reflect average private sector earnings or the pay of some key public or private sector jobs. The GST says the new rules will hamper business and growth in the economy and diminish the importance of the ROC's links to Britain. Cristina Cortez spoke to opposition leader Keith Asopardi.
Our concern is that these changes are going to hamper the economy and indeed affect the Britishness of Gibraltar in some respects, and affect inward investment, the ability to start up businesses, the ability to attract labour in Gibraltar. And I think it's important to go back to basics and understand how the economy has always worked. I mean, there hasn't been these types of restrictions that restrict people residing in Gibraltar, putting salary minimums. I mean, that will have an effect on people coming into Gibraltar, and it's been done under the guise of protecting the Gibraltarian, but I think it's not going to have that effect. I think what it's going to do is it's going to push labour to Spain. It's going to have the result that you are likely going to have more Spanish labour in the market. And I think long term we understand why there needs to be some restrictions, but the restrictions that have been put in place, we think, are issues that will affect the economy.
What evidence or assessment do you have that this will push labour to Spain?
So let's go back to those basics, that I was talking about before. So you've got 31,000 jobs in the economy and 11,000 Gibraltarians in employment. You almost have as many Spaniards in employment as you do Gibraltarians. You've got nearly 10,000 Spaniards and about 5,000 odd other British, as they're described, people in the economy. Now, when you look at the salary minimum that they've set for residing in Gibraltar, £37,500 means that if you want to reside, you've got to reach that salary minimum. There are plenty of sectors in the industry, wholesale, retail, hotel and restaurants, or indeed the health and healthcare sector, which are very important to public services, very important to the economy, where those salaries are not above 37,000. That's the average. It's well below that. That means that you are pushing those people to Spain, in effect, but in circumstances where, if you're British, you're no longer an EU national, and you've got to ask for permission from the Spanish government to reside in Spain, to work in Gibraltar, to benefit the economy of Gibraltar. You are, in other words, giving Spain another handle on our economy. Around 20 to 35% of the jobs in those sectors, hotel and restaurants, wholesale and retail, and indeed the healthcare sector, are other British jobs. The vast majority of those jobs in those sectors, more than 70% in many respects, are Spanish jobs. So what you're going to create is an increase in Spanish labour, and because it's going to be more difficult to attract British people because they can't reside in Gibraltar. We don't have a control of that. They're going to be pushed to Spain, and the Spanish government has to decide whether they can live there. What you're going to do, in effect, is realistically, on business, they're going to look for easier ways of attracting labour, and that means not attracting British people.
You said you're not against restrictions completely as a concept, so what would the GSD do differently in order to protect public services?
So I think things like the salary minimum, things like the hurdles on attracting on startups and perhaps some of the age issues, I think they need to be reviewed. We're not against restrictions per se, as long as they protect Gibraltar, its economy, and the Gibraltarian. But you're not going to achieve those things if you place hurdles on attracting British labour to Gibraltar, or other important non-EU sources of labour in Gibraltar. For example, in the accountancy world, I mean, it's well known that they're attracting non-EU labour, skilled labour, not Spanish labour, to Gibraltar. But if you place those hurdles, they're anti the objective of sustaining our economy in a productive, prosperous way. And indeed, what they're doing is giving greater control to Spain through permissions and attracting further Spanish labour. And I question whether that is what we want to do. We want to protect Gibraltar, protect the Gibraltarian, but not create hurdles for diminishing our Britishness or affecting our economy.
You're watching GBC News. Still to come, 5 years on from the abortion referendum. 2 local artists collaborate with an exhibition at the Fine Arts Gallery. And the traditional torch run kicks off the Special Olympics National Games. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back. Today marks 5 years since Gibraltar voted to legalise abortion in certain circumstances. The referendum, delayed by the COVID-19 pandemic and eventually held in June 2021, saw almost 63% of voters back changes to the law. The campaign group Gibraltar for Yes describes the vote as a landmark moment in Gibraltar's social and political history. The group says it remains committed to protecting the rights secured through the referendum. And in the studio tonight is Gibraltar for Yes spokesperson Selina Victory. Thank you for joining us.
Hi.
Okay, so the press release describes the abortion referendum as one of Gibraltar's most significant modern social and political movements. Why do you see it in those terms?
I think it's one of those occasions that people has to kind of look at the mirror and set a light onto themselves and look at themselves. And I think what happened is that there was a situation that was going on in Gibraltar, and we were ignoring it. We were sweeping it under the carpet. We thought that we lived in this country with low abortion rates. Obviously, we live in a predominantly Catholic community. And we weren't aware that this was happening. And I think the issue was brought forward, and we had to look and we had to say, look, are we realistic about what's going on in our community and actually provide the proper care and support that people need? Or do we just carry on living in this little bubble and just sweep everything that we don't like under the carpet and not make any kind of complex decisions? So in that way, socially, it's one of those times where it shows a mirror to yourself, and you have to look at yourself carefully and kind of set priorities about what you want. In political terms, it was also interesting because most countries, when legislation has had to be changed, it's gone through Parliament and it's been changed. In our case, the legislation was changed. It needed changing because of a series of external factors as well. But then the legislation was changed, and the decision was then put to the public in a referendum, which was very unusual. So the public, once again, had to take charge, if you want, of that political process, and that caused huge division, really, for something which was a fundamental right, and which the international situation meant that we would have to move towards that anyway, so that our laws were in keeping with the rest of the world.
Yeah, and for anyone who doesn't remember the detail, what changed legally and practically after the yes vote?
So before the yes vote, the legislation said that anybody either having an abortion or procuring an abortion, unless it was because the life of the mother was seriously at risk in that moment, it was a crime punishable for up to life imprisonment.
Okay.
And the issue was that this was going on anyway, and what we weren't able to do is offer people the support that they needed, either because they were going across the border to Spain, or to go into the UK for medical treatment. We were just actually abdicating our responsibility.
And what do you think it's done for women in Gibraltar since this vote came in?
I think from what I gather, I think despite the hiccups at the moment, it seems that we're offering a very comprehensive, very good abortion service within the legislation that we have. So once the referendum was enacted, the good thing was that the clinical pathways, everything was set ready to go literally from the day after the referendum. We then didn't have to go into protracted legal votes about, So from that sense, the service was there. There were very good clinicians and health professionals ready to take the service and run with it. And my understanding is that we actually have a very good service at the moment.
Do you know any statistics of how many abortions have taken place locally?
I don't have any statistics as such. Anecdotally, I know that it's kind of, it equates to what we knew was happening before. A couple of years ago, I know that the government published statistics. And as part of Gibraltar for Yes, we actually said, look, we welcome that the service is working, but we don't feel that statistics should be published, because this is a normal medical procedure, and you don't publish your number of appendectomies that you do, for example. And it was just really bringing out that feeling in the community, that divisiveness as well. And we went through a lot as a community, and it doesn't really need to be brought up all the time in terms of how many people.
Yeah, well, finally, just a last question. Your press release does say that progress cannot be taken for granted. What's the message you want to leave people with tonight?
Exactly that. We can't take things for granted. We've seen in the USA, fundamental rights being eroded. all sorts of obstacles. We've seen in Europe, in countries like Poland, all sorts of obstacles being put in the way for women to access their healthcare reproductive rights. And it can all be swept away, you know. So we really have to be very mindful of what we have, and we have to continue fighting and making sure that everybody everywhere has proper access to reproductive rights.
Selina, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Meanwhile, a former spokesperson for then Right to Life campaign is calling on the government to publish detailed abortion figures on the 5th anniversary of the amendment to Gibraltar's abortion law. Charles Gomez, who acted as the group's lawyer during the campaign, says the anniversary should be a time for reflection. He is asking the government to disclose the number of abortions carried out since the law changed and the legal grounds under which they were approved. He says the public has a right to know how the law is being applied. Well, 2 local artists are currently collaborating with an exhibition at the Fine Arts Gallery. It's a first for both Vanessa Ramos Israel and Douglas Ignacio, who had previously only seen each other's works online. Duetto provides an insight into local life with colourful installations adding to the visitors' experience.
The exhibition at the Fine Arts Gallery comes alive with paintings, sculptures and installations. Featuring works from artists Vanessa Ramos Israel and Douglas Ignacio, Duetto combines their art pieces in a way that complements both. We asked the artists how the collaboration came about.
Well, Vanessa was the one who approached me first. She wanted to do an exhibition. It's the first one for both of us, but she didn't want to do it on her own, so she offered me the collaboration with her. And I thought about it for a weekend and then came back to her on the Monday saying yes.
And how do your works work together? Because you're quite different artists.
They do. I think it's been a very organic, really, way of coming together. It was, I think originally we thought maybe we would have a wall each, but then when we actually saw our work, we saw that there was very common themes. So we went for the sort of installation by theme kind of idea, and that's what we've done.
You were talking about the installations as well. How is that different from other exhibitions that people might have seen?
Yeah, we wanted to add a bit more interest, not just paintings hanging on a wall at the same height in a line. So we've sort of mixed them up and put things in between, representing, like sort of matching things, not just paintings.
And it looks great. Do you think you'll potentially work together again?
Maybe, Douglas.
Why not? Yeah.
Take another weekend to decide.
From early pieces that Douglas made during his school years and Vanessa's combination of embroidery and watercolours, Duetto is hopefully the first of many future exhibitions.
Well, that's all from the GBC News team for now. The 41st Special Olympics Gibraltar National Games gets underway, and we say goodnight for now with images of today's law enforcement torch run. Enjoy your evening. Good night.
We're going to be running around Main Street and other roads in Gibraltar, fundraising and creating awareness for the Games. We have a group of people from the different emergency or law enforcement departments. We're also going to be accompanied by students from the Bayside School, which is a program which is to create more inclusion with Special Olympic athletes which are actually attending the school. It's going to be partly running and partly walking and creating awareness.